you feel the media covers what's going on at the Capitol? Do you think the media is fair, or do you think they're unfair? Or maybe in the middle?
I think it depends upon the story sometimes. Sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. So considering the pressures on them and the need to cover so many things at once, I think basically it's fair. It's annoyed me recently about the budget with pork spending.
Right.
The fact is, we didn't put any in this year. And yet it comes across that we loaded the budget with pork and the governor vetoed all that. He had that show and tell thing about vetoing all the items, when all of those items did not affect this year's budget at all, but were previous year's items that were left unspent for this year. And they said all that pork was we did not do any legislative initiative, the pork money that we talk about, at all this year because of the fiscal condition of the state. And yet 99.9% of the media outlets totally messed that completely and didn't report the actual situation at all. They went to the governor's little show and just bought the whole thing completely, not realizing that it was just that. It was a demonstration of a sort. It was making them feel good, but it did not directly affect the budget when he said he vetoed all those pork items, because the fact of the matter is there were none in it.
And I'm in the media, but I feel generally the coverage has been beat up on the governor, beat up on the legislature in New York State this year. Do you agree with that or not?
Yes, I do. And lately we've become more of a target than the governor, I think. The fact that he announced he was not running for election kind of removed himself from the fray, in a sense. And he's been attacking us too. Some of it's deserved against us, and I can understand that. And people do not distinguish between the Assembly and the Senate. The other thing the press reported, the legislature left town, didn't vote on the budget. Well, not true. We in the Assembly, when we adjourned Thursday night at 5 midnight, we got all the budget done. But they lump us together with the Senate, and they'll say the dysfunction, the scandals, and most of that in terms of some of those individuals under investigation, under arrest, under indictment, are not in the Assembly, but in the other house. But they lump us all together, and that has made it more challenging for us, and at the same time, some days discouraging as well. Behind
the New York State Museum, we have the governor's mansion, and the governor's role in this, the executive branch.
Yes, well, he's the main guy in town. There's no question about it.
Right.
The governor has the bully pulpit, as Theodore Roosevelt used to say, and he is able to present an agenda and galvanize public support for it. And it's his role to get the Assembly and the Senate to come on board with that agenda, whether it's the budget, as I said, or other policy matters that the governor is involved in. And we haven't always gotten along with Governor Paterson, but he's a good man, and I think he's trying to do the best that he can for the people of the state, although we've had some contentious weeks with that relationship, to say the least.
Well, that's happened with other governors over the years, too, where sometimes things aren't as harmonious as they could be, right?
It's correct. I think the part of the issue now for us as a partisan, as a Democrat, we had high expectations. When Spitzer was elected, we thought, well, Democratic governor, and the Senate went Democratic. We're Democratic. We thought this will be a lot easier. We're on the same page philosophically, ideologically. And then, of course, that disgraceful turn of events.
Right.
And I think a lot of us are disappointed that what we thought would happen hasn't happened, and the relationships are not as good as we thought they would be.
Do you feel, because this was his private life, that he really should have resigned or stuck it out? Because we have situations around the country that are similar, and the governors have remained in office. Do you think he moved too quickly and he should have thought it out a little longer?
No, I don't. And I think if he didn't resign, he would have been impeached. Because the private life is one thing, but there was some that gray area of whether
the banking transactions.
Yes, of whether what he did was legal or illegal. And as the governor of the state and the former attorney general, he should have known the difference, and it appeared as if he didn't. And both in the banking transactions and in the hiring of a woman for sexual favors across state lines, you came very close, if not near, a crime being committed, and that we cannot excuse. Now, other activities and actions that would not appear to violate the law, I think would have been a different situation and scenario altogether. But this was not that. This involved interstate activities and other things that the chief executive of the state can't be doing, and I think he's lucky he was not indicted.
Last year when Senator Kennedy passed away, Nancy Reagan was on Larry King's show, and she lamented that Senator Kennedy was the end of something where he would have differences of opinion with someone on an issue. But she said it was never personal. And she talked about President Reagan and Tip O'Neill. I guess they basically agreed on nothing, but in the evening they would get together at the White House and joke. And she's lamented that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. If you disagree with someone on an issue, it's almost like it's personal.
Yeah, I think it's certainly much more worse on the federal level than the state level. And I mean, I thought it was a disgrace when President Obama talked to the Congress, State of the Union, and the rudeness displayed by some people there never happened before. And I think we're seeing an all-time low in the collegiality at the federal level. And I think there's a bit of racism there myself. But we don't have that sense of divisiveness at the state level. And in our House, for example, the new Republican leader, the minority leader, Brian Kolb, has really built an opposition, but not in a confrontational or antagonistic manner. They have their positions that they argue for very forcefully, but the dialogue is done in a very collegial, respectful manner, and that has been a very good change in our own House. And I don't think, maybe because we're smaller, the Assembly and the Senate, we don't have that clash and that disrespect that we're seeing at the federal level.
Were you pleased or displeased or apathetic that when the president came to Hudson Valley Community College, he made it very clear that he would prefer that Governor Paterson not run for office? Do you think that was right of him to stick his nose in our stuff?
No, I didn't think it was right. There are ways and times to do that, but I don't think the day or so before he's arriving here, the guest of New York State, to treat the governor of the state in that manner. It was embarrassing, and I think over the top, shouldn't have been done.
You felt in many ways you had more control over things as mayor of the city of Cohoes than you do in the Assembly, because you said we'd have meetings, we'd discuss all options, make a decision, and then bang, it would be done in like 2 days, on certain matters, and that doesn't happen, as you just explained.
The role of the executive, whether it's a small city or a big city, is totally different from the role of a legislator. And this is more of a consensus building and selling your idea than not imposing it, but at the executive end, it's a little easier to effectuate your proposal, your idea, than, as I said, dealing with all of us in the Assembly and in the Senate and the governor's office as well. But different challenges and different opportunities. I've been fortunate to have both roles in my career, and that is something that I think being a mayor keeps me in good stead with the work that I do in the Assembly, and I've been fortunate to have two roles in government through the years.